Hi everyone, Karen the Warp Spinster here. Thanks for joining me today. Welcome to the channel. I have been at 6s and 7s about what to do this week. I am at exceptionally low energy for one reason or another, and so I'm going to go with something that I suppose is fairly simple, but trying to bring in some different concepts. So what I want to do is all straight line sewing today, no curves, and it's inspired by the tall houses that I saw in Amsterdam and in Belgium, and actually all over Europe. I know Norway has sort of their own, I don't want to say version of, their own style. Poland has them, so lots of different places have these narrow, tall houses. I know in Amsterdam it's because the tax was on the physical ground that you occupied, so they just kept going up rather than out. That may be true for other places. It may be for some other reason there, but in any case, there's something about the pattern of all of these narrow houses lined up along street after street that is really appealing to me. There's something about that pattern. And so I thought I would do that, but make it a little wild and wonky because that's what I do. No disrespect to those buildings. I love them, and that's why I'm doing this. So I want the basic facade to be wild, crazy kinds of fabric, just because winter is here and I could use a little cheer. So the fabrics that I'm choosing are things that are not uniform. So something like this, because I'm going to be cutting this up into a lot of pieces going around the windows, I don't want something regular because it would be jarring to my eye to see these so fragmented and not lining up. Whereas with something that's irregular like this, it's not going to be as noticeable. So I want to do, I'll start out with one house, but they end up being, sometimes they're much the same height, sometimes they're different, and they have these different gables on them. I don't know if I'll be doing that or not. So I want to start out with, let's start with this. It is a gloomy early winter day here. And then for windows, doors, I don't know about roofs yet. For many of them, at least in Amsterdam, you don't really see the roof so much. You see the gables. So I'm not going to think about that yet, but I do want to do windows. Some will be lighted and some will be dark. I'm thinking maybe about this for the trim around the windows, maybe. And I don't necessarily need the windows to be parallelograms, rectangles, or squares. They can be wonky because that's how we do it here. So, nor do the houses themselves need to be straight. Architects are probably having fits with me right now, but I want them to be kind of wonky. They'll be sitting next to each other, and we'll just see how it goes. I just want to have some fun today, not think too hard, just play with some things. So I'm going to start out with probably a top story of the house, doesn't matter probably, and going to insert a couple of windows in. And the windows, I think, will be irregular. Some floors will have 2, some will have 3. That tends not to be the case in these houses. They tend to be, lined up and quite linear, but we don't do very much of that here. So I am going to choose, say, a length for the top of this house. How large do I want these houses to be? I do not know. Actually, at this point, I really do not care. So I am going to cut couple of pieces here, and the windows will be inserted in there somewhere. And then I will need some more to be the top and the bottom of the windows, of course, but perhaps we ought to start with the window. And the top floor is an artist in the midst of angst who's trying to figure out how to unblock his creativity, his or her creativity, their creativity. So it's going to be a window. Do we want this to be a gable kind of thing? Maybe not. But we will have a big window because they want natural light for the art. I do want to put, do I want to put in, what do you call those? Not mullions. Anyway, the cross pieces. And I think I would like to do that. Would I like them to be black, striped, or something funky? Let's do something funky because that's just more fun. So here's where we could maybe use these. Now this means I'm going to be slicing this in however many I want, but I think I'm going to do just a 4-paned window, and these will not be straight either. So we're doing strictly improv kind of stuff here today because I just do not want to work things out. And then I will sew that and then come back and cut the cross piece, probably crookedly. And then we'll have the window, we can put the trim around it, and then we can figure out what we're doing within the building facade. Here is one window with panes, and I have cut it a little bit crookedly, though you probably can't see it. I may need to make it a little more obvious. Now these I lined up pretty well, which kind of amazes me, but if I had wanted it to be really wonky, I could have offset it so that this centerpiece didn't line up, and that would be fine. If you do that, I would suggest that it be far enough, quite far off, so that people don't think you were trying to line it up in the middle and didn't make it. Just loud and proud. All right, so now I want to put on a striped trim around it. I think. Again, it's going to be narrow trim. This finishes at about 1/4 inch. And I may want even a little less on this. So when I do narrow seams like that, I will sew one seam, trim it to maybe about 1/8 inch or a little more if I can, and then do the same on the second seam so that when they overlap, if I'm pressing them toward what I'm piecing, when they overlap, then they won't have to do a second fold underneath and create that much bulk. So I think for this I will aim for about 1/8 inch, maybe a little wider, and just put a trim around, so 2 sides and then 2 other sides. Oh, and I want the stripes to be going this way, so I'm going to cut my piece like that. With this on here, you can see a little bit better that it's wonky, that it's not a rectangular window. I could also do that rather than just cutting it to begin with at an angle. I could also lay this piece down at an angle and then follow the edge of the stripe in order to get that crooked side. And now I'm just going to trim this seam a bit, and it will be ready when I sew on the facade pieces then. And here I've done a seam with the piece laid at an angle, just a slight angle, but a little bit more of an angle on the edge of the window, and then just did my seam following the edge of the stripe. And here is our window waiting for its facade. I do not have to make this window straight in the facade. I'm sorry, architects, you probably just, are there any architects among us? Sorry about that. I'm a great admirer of great architecture. I'm not able to recreate it, obviously. So I think I want to do that. And I am limited by the width of my fabric strips here. I'm using 2.5 inch strips, which I'm sure you've all guessed. And so if I'm doing it in a crooked fashion on an angle, then I have to make sure that I have enough top and bottom to cover this, although there's no reason that can't be chopped off either. So I'm going to take a piece, and I'll need it a little wider. To be safe, I'm going to give a little extra here, or I could just sew it on and then trim it off when I get to that point. But I want to make sure that I have enough to straighten it out. Well, to straighten it out, I don't know. To begin with, I'll have this straight at the top. I can't promise it's going to stay that way. I'm feeling a little off today, and that's why everything is going to be a little off. I have top and bottom sewed on, and now I want to sew in the window, the sides of it. And if I want it to be crooked, and I probably do, then I've got plenty of space here to straighten that out if I want to. And of course, these trim pieces need not have been equal, and it may turn out that they won't be in the end anyway. Do I want them to be equal? The thing is, I don't want it to be so wild that the eye just doesn't know what to do and is just winging all over the place. So there's a lot going on here, and so I think probably do it like that. Will I? Or like that. I think something like that will be all right. So we're just kind of winging it, doing what we're going to do. So probably something like this, not too crazy. I will do that, and then we'll do the second. So I trimmed that seam because there's lots of overlap, of course. And we have decided we're doing a crooked window. I do want these to sort of line up because I want to have some space there if I need it. This is going to be a lot going on, isn't it? And then this one will probably be a little bit on the crooked side too. This one's going this way. Yeah, I think I'll continue with that. And sew that and be back. Thinking maybe this should be entitled Not Up to Code. Now, I am going to trim these, but I am going to, rather than trim them straight across, which I might end up doing to begin with, but I think I will cut them such that I retain as much of this as I can in case I want it to be crooked up there and the same down here. So of course, I could do everything or some things with curves, but I'm doing just straight things today. Well, you know what I mean. Only straight seams, not straight pieces. And there we have the top story. Now, because there is so much going on here, I think I want to do a little bit of a ledge or something here. And I'm not convinced I want this to be this wide. I might want it to be, you know, something like that. And then have, say, 3 smaller windows in the next story and have panes on them, but not do the trim here, so that it gives a little more rest to the eye, because this is wild. Then the next building that I do, perhaps it will be, I don't know, a plain color. I don't know, but I think I will trim this down a bit. For a ledge or something, I might do just a really narrow strip of, say, this stripe. And then the next story will have 3 smaller windows going across it, like right next to each other, with panes in it, but not trim. Is that what I just said? So ledge first, and then I'll cut out some basic window shapes for the next story down. I have changed my mind. I am not going to put panes on these windows. I'm going to have 1 light one and 2 black. I want it asymmetrical, so the light is on one side, though of course you could do the opposite. And then I think, because I have limited amount of this strip, of course, I'm going to maybe cut this strip in, sorry, I'm pondering off screen here. Maybe cut this strip in half so that I have enough to do another story down below. So this is looking wild and crazy, isn't it? I do have these pieces that I trimmed off from here that I can use to put between these windows. I need to get 3 in there, so I may have to adjust the size accordingly. But yeah, I probably need to trim them down a little bit yet. And then we'll have that. Okay. I sewed these using whatever angle I had from when I trimmed these from above, and now I'm just going to see what I can do about trimming these. And I think I might want these to be relatively straight across story to story, just because I want the eye to have a little someplace to take a break. Now, given the sizes here, I'm thinking that I might want to trim. So I'm trying to conserve fabric and make sure I have enough for another story here. So I might trim this down a bit to add on to here. And it's just going to be a narrower house, but that's all right because these are narrow houses. We'll see how it goes. This is improv. It's just take a wild guess and hope for the best, right? We're using informed ideas is what we're doing. All right, so, and that will be another story. And then we can use these pieces in between whatever I do on the first story. I don't know how this is going to turn out, people. I just don't know. It may be a bust, but then I will have gotten it out of my head and know that it's not going to look the way I thought it was going to look, and I can be done with that idea. The thing about this is just one house, and I want to do the pattern of it across a lot of houses. So, I don't know. I just don't know. We'll have to see what happens. I think what I've decided to do is to cut this at an angle so that the story's a little bit at an angle. And I want it to be, this window is leaning sort of that way, so I want these to be leaning in opposition that way. And I am going to put this put a narrow strip of this in between and see where we are at that point. Here's our house so far, and definitely it needs another story. And I don't know what's going to be in that story. Shall I have more windows? Should I have a door and a big window? Of course, you could always do things like put a dog in the window or a cat in the window or curtains in some windows, or however you want to do that, which would be fun. You might want to do it in a larger piece than this is, but I want this to be about the pattern going across. I don't know how much pattern there will be by the time I'm finished, but I'm almost inclined to make this 4 stories if I can, and do another story of windows, say about that size, and then do a 4th story that has a door and a big window. That's what I've seen a lot in houses in Europe, which is the inspiration for this. Of course, inspiration doesn't have to be translated exactly. So, this is going to be a pretty wild house, isn't it? I'm thinking that the next door house will be maybe a solid color, perhaps with funky windows, and we'll see how that looks. Maybe I'll prefer that to this. We'll see. So I need to, get some lunch before Sheila's class. So I will go and do that, and then do some more work on this off camera. This is just, it's how I'm going to do all of them, so I don't have to belabor it all with you. And speaking of Sheila's class, some of you have been interested in seeing what I'm producing for the class. So here's what I did for this week's project. I am machine appliquing this with a near satin stitch, not quite, but a near satin stitch in matching and contrasting. I've got 2 different purples that I'm using to do the outlining and the applique. In some cases, that stitching is actually going to be a decorative piece in it, not just outlining something, but creating a new shape within a shape. So I have gotten started on that. I've made good progress on it, but certainly not going to be finished for class in 15 minutes. So that's where I'm at with that class. And again, this is a Sheila Frampton Cooper class. It is, discovering your, I've got it, discovering your visual voice with motifs. So that's it for the moment. I shall be back with a little more of an update, see what happens with this. I don't know. It's fun, but I'm not sure it's going to work out. We'll see. Let me know what you think below. I want to talk about this piece for a minute because it isn't what I want. Let me talk first about the things that I think work pretty well with it, or that make it better than it could have been. So one is that there's more visual color weight down here because I have more black, and then 2 smaller pieces of black, and then just the black and white here. And that's good. The strips of black and white stripe help to break up everything that's going on with all of this print going on. And I ended up doing these horizontally. This one's a little bit not, but mostly this is horizontal. And I think that the eye needs that because there's so much going on. So there are some things about it that are good. Those are the pluses. Now the minuses, which overall win for me anyway, is that there is all this stuff going on. This is just too much for what I was visualizing. The white gets sort of fades in to the background. So this was good to have the outline here with the black and white, because it helps to pop that white out. When it's by itself, not so much. Somehow the balance is off to me too, and I think it's because this is sort of top heavy, and it might be that it would help a little just to take the top off, or maybe put, I don't know, a black gable shape up there or something. I don't know, but mostly there's just too much going on for me. And I love this print, and I think you can have some really wonderful things with lots of wild prints, but this is not it, at least what my brain wants to see from what it had pictured going into this. So I'm going to do a couple more pieces differently, and then we'll come back and compare. I'm basically going to do the same things that I did here, the same methods. It's just improv, slice and add things in. So I will continue to do 3 or 4 stories, or however many, but then we can come back and compare it and see what we think. Again, if I had a lot of these with different prints in them, let me grab, say, this print, then there could be more, and it's like putting a scrap quilt together. You do a couple of pieces or a couple of blocks with all these scraps in it, and you think, yeesh, but you have to see the whole. And that could be part of what's going on here. But part of the reason I'm not going for this so much is because the print takes over the view. And what I want is the pattern of the houses marching down the street. So I think that just overall, this piece is not at all what I wanted it to be. I think there are some fun things about it that you could do, but it's not what I'm looking for. So I'm going to work on a couple other pieces, and we will come back and take a look at those, and we'll see what we think. Maybe I won't like those very much either. But we're about exploring here, so it's okay to make pieces you don't like, because then you know that's not what, it may be what I thought sort of in my brain, but the picture is not the same as what I thought. All right, I am back. Isn't it just, I feel very powerful. My hands will change the colors. I am back, and I'm doing a solid colored building now. I still want the windows to be a little wonky. Maybe the houses will be a little wonky in the end. I don't know. And I'm not going to go through this all again, since we did it with this house. And this video will get to be much too long if I belabor this anymore. So I'm going to be doing the solid colors, and my plan is to have each story be a different shade of it, so it will get lighter as it goes up, but the windows are going to get darker. So there'll be a darker gray there. This is gray. It looks a little white in the video, but, and then black at the top. So that's my plan, and I'll let you know how it goes. Now, my next thing is, I wonder if I want to put just a narrow strip of a stripe in, just because it's a black and white stripe. My next question is, I know that I said I was only going to do straight lines, but do I want to try a curve in there? We're exploring, so is that an option? Maybe put this on a curve. I've left these sides a little longer in case I want to make the sides crooked, so I'll have a little bit of leeway to do that. But I think I might do a bit of a curve. We'll see. Maybe I'll hate it and we'll change it. That's all that exploration's about, right? Try and fail, try and fail, try and fail. Here is where I'm at this point. You can see it looks quite different in many ways from this one. And it, again, wasn't exactly what I had in my head, but I'm okay with that. I was thinking that I should put another story down here, maybe in the, do I have a darker blue, darker even blue, perhaps, that could go down here that would have a door and a window. But looking at this pattern that it creates, I'm not sure that I want to do that. Maybe it's not going to look like a building so much, but has that pattern that I'm looking for. And just because we always have to, eesh, that's bad. Always have to do something with circles just to try them out. That certainly would be a possibility, maybe. Maybe a different black and white print, not a stripe. Perhaps I will cut a circle of that and see how that looks. Different sizes maybe too. And this may not be what I want to do at all, but I always like to try circles. Oh, and these edges, again, I could cut them straight or straight crooked, wonkify it, or I could make them curvy. This is beginning to look like a Dr. Seuss building to me. Maybe this is Dr. Seuss's office. Ted Geisel's office, that's what it is. We'll call it Theodore's office. I will go cut myself a circle of some black and white print. All right, I have tried it. I don't like it. I like the stripe, all right, but I don't like this, maybe because it's too close to a solid, well, I don't know. There just isn't enough contrast, oddly enough. It just doesn't look right to me, which makes me kind of sad because you know I love circles and you know I love black and white. So what's the problem? Let me try another stripe circle. I don't mind that so much, maybe because it ties in with that. But I want something a little larger, I think, so more this size. All right. I don't think I'm wild about this either. Maybe it's the size that's bothering me. If I did another one that size, it's just too overwhelming, or maybe it's not big enough. Not sure, but that's a question for another day, perhaps. Now, about the edges here, let's try doing just a little bit of a funky curve here and still keep enough fabric that I can cut it straight if I want to. I'm thinking I'd rather have that go out, but there we are. I don't know, what do you think? What do you think? What if we cut this side straight and then we can compare them? I am just struggling a bit today. Have you noticed? It's just something going on or not going on in my head today. Let's just say that creativity is not exactly oozing out of my pores today. Okay, what do you think? Do you like it better squared off or curved off? What I'm going to do is put this into Procreate and duplicate it and play with it a little bit. If I keep playing with stuff here, this will go on beyond the new year. So to save yourselves, I'm going to do it in Procreate and duplicate it and play with it a little bit, so that I want to try different colors and just try a few different things to see if it's going to match what I had envisioned. Well, it hasn't already, it hasn't, but perhaps once there are more of them so that I can see the pattern, it will be better. I think I need something down here maybe. I've got this weight up here. It seems like I should have something down here, so I might add that. Anyway, so that's going to be it for this week. Next week I have something in mind that's really kind of a little bit off the wall, but we'll see how it goes, as if things aren't off the wall all over the place. And I have reached 10,000 subscribers, which is just amazing to me, and I'm so grateful for all of you, all of my subbies, as they say. Thank you so much for being along the quilting ride with me. I'm so glad you're with me. Thank you very much. The piece that I'm working on for Sheila's class this week, I will put up here. There are still a couple of things in question. One of them is Sheila's not sure. She's wild about the darkish piece that runs from the top down to the bottom, basically, because it cuts it in half. I'm not entirely sure I'm with her on that. I do know that most of the time I don't like to have something cut down the middle or from top to bottom. But I don't know about this one. I'm still thinking about that. And I have started doing the applique. I'm doing a sort of satin-ish stitch, not quite so close together. I just like the look of it in this piece anyway, that's a little less dense. And I don't really have the proper foot yet to handle that, to ride over that density. I've got a couple coming, but it just, when the presser foot slides over what I've already stitched, it makes it a little messy. So I'm waiting for a foot with a groove on the bottom. But anyway, I'm really liking it. It's like a 12 by 18-ish size. And it's based on an ancient Roman, pre-Roman actually, Saharan city. It's made, these are mud huts, and it's an aerial view. Inspiration was a photo in National Geographic that I tore out years ago, and I've always wanted to do something with. And so you're seeing the rooftops of these mud huts, and they are actually, it's just astonishing. I wish I could find an online picture to show you, but all of the houses are built sort of within each other. They're nestled, they're not the same size or shape, and they're all nestled in. It's amazing. It's quite beautiful. So that is what I did for last week. This week we have a new assignment, which I've kind of thought about, but haven't really done anything with just yet. So we'll see what happens with that. Anyway, that's it for this week. Thanks so much for joining me and for subscribing. She's back. If you recall, we had this first wild and crazy sort of fun. And then I decided to do one that was a little easier on the eye, more restful for the eye. There are some things to be said about this one, but this is much more restful to the eye. And of course I like solids, so that doesn't hurt either. And then I don't know if I promised, but I think I said that I might take it into Procreate and see what it would look like if I can zoom in a little more. If I were to continue as I had planned, which was to do it in different colors, a little bit different shapes. So I've got some that are tall and narrow and some that are a little more squat. And I like this. This is more what I was going for, which was a pattern sort of effect. I made this bit at the top narrower. So this was relatively wide. But I decided that it needed some weight at the bottom. So I added in a narrow black line, which you can probably barely see on the screen here. And then I tried it with a wider black line, and I think I like that better because it needs some way to ground it or give it some weight. I like this at the top because it's very narrow, but it's got a little bit of a curve to it, which brings all of these striped curves together. So this in the end is what I was aiming for and where I will get at some point, but just not at the moment. So let's take a look at what we've done, sort of the progression here, and it's been quite a change, hasn't it? So we started out with the wild and woolly and funky. Well, it's wild and cotton and funky. And then went to a solid color and finally to... And I'll see you next week, I hope. In the meantime, be well, be safe, be happy, be quilting. Peace out.